The last man to hit 400 in Major League Baseball is currently decapitated. His head is literally stored in a vat of liquid nitrogen in a sci-fi laboratory out in Arizona.
Right.
And somehow that is like only the fourth most interesting thing about Ted Williams.
I mean, it really is the ultimate cinematic contradiction.
Yeah.
You have a man who totally embodied mid-century Americana, right?
Yeah.
Like, he served as John Glenn's wingman in the Korean War.
Yeah.
Yet he carried this secret heritage he felt forced to hide, and then ultimately he tried to conquer death itself.
It's wild. So welcome to today's deep dive into the source material. We have a massive stack of sources today detailing the life of Ted Williams, and our mission for this deep dive is tailored specifically for you and your pplpod project.
Exactly.
You're trying to build a story-driven, deeply human biographical profile. So we aren't just reading off the back of a baseball card today.
No, not at all.
We're going to extract the turning points, the conflicts, and really the psychological mechanisms of a man who chased absolute perfection.
And who punished anyone who got in his way.
Exactly. To understand the psychology of the man holding the bat, you really have to look at the penchant of his childhood.
Yeah. Theodore Samuel Williams, born in San Diego in 1918. He was named after Teddy Roosevelt and his father, Samuel, who was a soldier and a photographer.
Right.
But Williams actually detested the name Teddy. I mean, he despised it so much that he went in and altered his own birth certificate later in life to read Theodore.
Oh, wow. See, that immediately gives you a sense of someone desperate to dictate his own terms.
Totally.
But the real friction in his origin story from the sources comes from his mother, Mae Venzer. She was a Mexican-American woman from El Paso, Texas, and just a fiercely devoted evangelist for the Salvation Army.
Right, and Williams and his brother would actually cringe when she dragged them to these street corner revivals.
Yeah, but beyond just the, typical teenage embarrassment of the revivals, there was a much heavier burden he carried. He deliberately hid his Mexican heritage. There's a quote looking back on that time where he stated, "If I had my mother's name, there is no doubt I would have run into problems in those days considering the prejudices people had in Southern California."
And that right there, that is the foundational piece for your profile. I mean, he felt completely out of control in his own environment.
Yeah, he couldn't control his mother's long absences working for the church.
Right. And he couldn't control the systemic prejudice of the outside world either. So he sought out a closed system. And he found it in a baseball.
At 8 years old. Right.
Yeah. His uncle Saul Venzer, a former semi-pro player, taught him how to throw. From that moment, it's like the geometry of a baseball diamond became his sanctuary.
So I am trying to visualize that transition. Like, how does a kid hiding from his identity turn into this absolute savant at the plate?
Well, by treating hitting as a solvable equation. Early in his minor league career, he wasn't out drinking with the team or goofing off.
Yeah.
He was actively hunting down legends. Guys like Rogers Hornsby and Ty Cobb, literally grilling them on the physics of a swing.
Oh, wow.
He realized that if he mastered the mechanics, no one could tell him who to be. He could just dominate that specific 60-foot, 6-inch space between the pitcher's mound and home plate.
And that obsessive need for control, it perfectly sets up what happened in 1941.
Oh, the 1941 season.
Yeah. So by late September of that year, Williams's batting average was sitting at .3995. Now, for the non-math folks listening, baseball statistics officially round up.
Right.
So if he stops playing right then, he goes down in history as a 400 hitter. His manager, Joe Cronin, actually comes to him and offers him a pass.
Just sit out the game.
Exactly. Sit on the bench during the final doubleheader of the season against the Philadelphia Athletics. Protect the record. Secure your legacy.
I mean, imagine you were facing that choice.
Yeah.
The safe bet is to sit. Almost anyone else takes the bench.
But backing in isn't control. Williams looks the offer and says, if I'm going to be a 400 hitter, I want more than my toenails on the line.
I love that quote.
Me too. So he plays. He goes 6 for 8 that day, finishing the season at .406.
And to add another layer to the mythology of that year, earlier that same season in the 1941 All-Star Game, he hit a game-winning 3-run home run with his eyes closed.
Wait, seriously? With his eyes closed?
Yeah, he literally closed his eyes on contact, which he later called the most thrilling hit of his life.
That is just insane.
Right. Hitting .406 is an astonishing feat of visual tracking and biomechanics alone. But doing it on the final day, risking the very milestone he coveted, that is an assertion of pure will.
Yeah, it's like he was proving to the universe that he wasn't a victim of circumstance. He made the outcome happen.
Absolutely.
But here's where the narrative hits a wall, though. He hits .406, a statistical marvel that literally hasn't been replicated in over 80 years.
Right.
And he doesn't win the Most Valuable Player award. I'm looking at these sources and struggling to compute that. How do you hit .406 and lose MVP?
Well, you really have to look at the media narrative of 1941. Joe DiMaggio won the MVP that year, primarily because of his 56-game hitting streak.
Okay, sure.
And DiMaggio played for the Yankees, he was graceful, and the press absolutely adored him. Williams, meanwhile, was prickly, arrogant, and he was already warring with the media.
I see.
This establishes a brutal recurring theme for your pplpod profile, Williams routinely did the statistically impossible, only to be overshadowed because he just refused to play the political game with the establishment.
And that tension only escalated the following year. In 1942, he wins the Triple Crown.
Which is huge.
Right, meaning he led the entire league in batting average, home runs, and runs batted in. He is at the absolute zenith of human athletic achievement. And then, well, the world intervenes.
Yeah. The draft for World War II begins.
And even this becomes a public relations nightmare.
It really did. Williams was initially classified as 3A, which was a deferment granted because he was the sole financial provider for his mother.
Right.
But the public backlash was vicious. People looked at this towering, perfectly healthy athlete and accused him of dodging the war. Quaker Oats, a brand he loved, dropped his sponsorship immediately.
Man, he was furious at the public reaction, but he ended up enlisting in the Navy Reserve and became a Marine pilot.
He did.
And this is the part of the research that really threw me. We usually assume athletic genius is localized, right? Like that a guy who can hit a fastball is just good at baseball.
Right, just a sports guy.
Exactly. But his brain translated perfectly to the cockpit. The sources say he had a 3.85 GPA in ground school.
Yeah, he went to aerial gunnery school and broke all the existing records for reflexes, coordination, and visual reaction time.
It's staggering.
Think about the cognitive load required to hit a baseball. You have a fraction of a second to read the spin of the seams, calculate the trajectory, and execute a physical response.
Right.
That is extreme Z-axis depth perception. When you put that same brain in a fighter plane, tracking enemy tracers and calculating aerial deflections at high speeds,
the mechanics are shockingly similar.
Exactly. Johnny Pesky, his teammate who was in the same aviation program, noted that Williams made a plane's machine guns play like a symphony orchestra. He was a natural-born killer in the sky.
So he finished World War II as an instructor in Hawaii, but history wasn't done with his prime years. Fast forward to 1952, he is recalled to active duty for the Korean War.
And he was fiercely resentful about this. I mean, he felt the Navy was unfairly targeting inactive reservists.
Wait, if he hated it so much and he was a massive national icon at this point, why didn't he just use his fame to dodge it or, take a desk job?
Because that would mean compromising his internal code.
Ah.
He complained bitterly in private, but he did his duty without a single public grievance. He flew 39 combat missions in Korea.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was assigned as the wingman for the future astronaut John Glenn, who later called Williams one of the best pilots he ever flew with.
That's high praise.
Seriously. And during a massive 35-plane raid, Williams took heavy anti-aircraft fire. His hydraulics and electrical systems were completely knocked out.
Oh my God.
He had to limp his damaged jet back to base and execute a belly landing, literally sliding down the runway engulfed in sparks and smoke. He simply walked away from the wreckage and earned an air medal.
The profound what-if here is just staggering. Williams lost nearly 5 prime years of his athletic career to military service.
It's true.
If you look at his raw numbers and extrapolate those missing years, there is a very legitimate mathematical argument that he would have shattered Babe Ruth's home run records and set the all-time RBI record.
It creates such a striking duality. The man who obsessed over his baseball legacy sacrificed the peak of it for a country whose media constantly villainized him.
Which brings us to the collision of his method and his madness when he returned to the field. He actually wrote a book called The Science of Hitting.
He didn't view batting as an art at all. He viewed it as a hard science. He used a lighter bat than other power hitters, which really confused people at the time.
But he figured out the physics before the rest of the league.
Right.
Force equals mass times acceleration. But in the kinetic energy equation, velocity is squared.
Math strikes again.
Exactly. A lighter bat swung faster, transfers significantly more energy to the ball than a heavy bat swung slowly.
It's like his brain operated on a strict computer algorithm. If the pitch was outside his predetermined strike zone, the algorithm simply refused to execute the swing command.
Yep.
Because of that discipline, he holds the highest walks-to-plate appearances ratio of any Hall of Famer. He just wouldn't bite.
And opposing teams got so desperate, they invented what became known as the Boudreaux shift.
Right, the chef.
Because Williams was a pull hitter, meaning he consistently hit the ball to the right side of the field, teams would literally move all of their infielders to the right side, leaving the left side completely empty.
And a normal player would adapt and just tap the ball to the empty left side for a free base hit.
Right, take the free base.
But Williams stubbornly refused. He arrogantly kept hitting it to the right, simply overpowering their defensive strategy by hitting the ball harder than they could field it.
Yeah, he mastered the physics, but he completely failed at the politics. He despised the press, sarcastically referring to them as the Knights of the Keyboard.
Ouch.
Yeah, he felt they constantly dug into his personal life, likely poking at that deep-seated insecurity regarding his mother and his hidden upbringing.
And that animosity frequently bled over to the fans in the stands, too. He demanded absolute perfection from himself, and he demanded absolute loyalty from the crowd.
Which is tough in Boston.
Right. If they booed him for a fielding error, he just snapped. I am honestly having trouble squaring the man who mastered such clinical discipline with a guy who acted so unhinged.
They seem like two different people.
Yeah. Once, after being booed for dropping a fly ball, he spat at the fans near the dugout, earning a $5,000 fine. Another time, he struck out, threw his bat in a violent fit of rage, and it flew into the stands, striking a 60-year-old woman.
Oh, no.
And in a bizarre twist of fate, the woman turned out to be the general manager's housekeeper.
You're kidding.
No, it was an accident, but it cemented his reputation as a volatile misanthrope.
But, if you stop your profile there, you fail your listeners.
Yeah.
Behind the spitting and the bat throwing was a man of staggering, almost secretive empathy.
The Jimmy Fund.
Yes. He became intimately linked with the Jimmy Fund, which is a charity raising money for children's cancer research and treatment. He made countless bedside visits to dying children.
Yeah.
He paid exorbitant hospital bills entirely out of his own pocket.
But the condition of his charity is the most revealing psychological detail in all the sources. He would do it only if the press never found out.
Not a single word.
Right. If a reporter or a camera showed up at the hospital, Williams would literally turn around and walk out. He refused to let the media turn his genuine empathy into a PR rehabilitation story.
It was a very complex defense mechanism. He wanted to heal people, but he refused to be consumed by the public. And that refusal sets the stage for his departure from the game on September 28, 1960.
His final career at-bat at Fenway Park, it plays out like a movie script.
It really does.
He steps up to the plate and hits a towering home run. As he rounds the bases, the crowd goes wild. They are chanting for him, begging him to come out of the dugout and acknowledge them.
And he doesn't.
No, he sits there, stoic, refusing to tip his cap. John Updike, the famous novelist, was in the stands that day and wrote an essay about the moment, ending with the legendary line, "Gods do not answer letters."
Man, what a line. It was his final act of defiance against the establishment. Though it should be noted, he did finally soften decades later, returning in 1991 for Ted Williams' Day and tipping his cap to the Fenway crowd.
Right. But we can't gloss over his post-retirement life, because he didn't just fade onto a golf course. He applied that same obsessive, algorithmic brain to entirely new domains.
Like managing.
Yeah, he managed the Washington Senators and actually won Manager of the Year in 1969. He became a fly fisherman. And not just a hobbyist, he was inducted into the International Game Fish Association Hall of Fame.
Because fly fishing is, at its core, another application of geometry, fluid dynamics, and physics. He approached casting a line with the exact same mathematical rigor he applied to a baseball swing.
He also threw himself into politics. The sources note he was a staunch Republican, campaigning for Richard Nixon and keeping a photo of Nixon on his managerial desk.
Right.
He later endorsed George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. Now, love it or hate it, just reporting from the sources here, he was a man who decided what his parameters were and refused to compromise them.
Whether it was the strike zone, the cockpit, or his political ideology.
Exactly.
But, none of those eras prepare you for the sheer whiplash of his aftermath.
No. The end of the story is incredibly jarring. Ted Williams died in 2002 of cardiac arrest. His legal will explicitly stated his desire to be cremated and have his ashes scattered in the Florida Keys.
Which is a poetic conclusion for a Hall of Fame fisherman.
Right.
But after he died, his son John Henry and his younger daughter Claudia produced a piece of paper. It was an informal family pact, allegedly scribbled on an ink-stained napkin.
A napkin?
Yes, and in this document, Ted, John Henry, and Claudia agreed to be put into biostasis after we die to be able to be together in the future.
His eldest daughter, Bobby Jo, was horrified. She launched a bitter lawsuit claiming the signature was forged and that her siblings were exploiting their father.
It turned into a highly public legal circus.
But laboratory analysis proved the signature on the napkin was genuine. John Henry argued that his father was a lifelong believer in science, which, that aligns perfectly with his clinical approach to hitting in aviation.
Right, he trusted science above all else.
Yeah, and that he was willing to try cryonics if it offered a chance to reunite the family. Bobby Jo eventually dropped the lawsuit in exchange for a payout from a trust fund.
And this led to the man who symbolized mid-century American flesh and blood being transported to the Alcor Life Extension Foundation.
Just incredible.
To clarify the science here for you, neuropreservation involves replacing the blood with cryoprotectants, which is essentially medical-grade antifreeze, to prevent ice crystals from destroying the tissue.
Okay.
The body is then decapitated, and the head is vitrified and stored in a vat of liquid nitrogen, pausing decay in the hope that future technology might one day revive the brain.
It is almost impossible to reconcile the Mexican-American kid throwing baseballs in San Diego with a frozen head in an Arizona lab.
It really is.
But as we pull all of these sources together for your profile, the psychological through line is incredibly sharp. Ted Williams was a man of absolute extremes.
Yeah.
He hid his roots to forge himself into an icon. He was a reluctant warrior who became one of the most lethal fighter pilots in the sky. He was a volatile misanthrope who secretly bankrolled cancer wards.
He just demanded unyielding control over his reality. He controlled the strike zone by refusing to swing at bad pitches. He controlled his fighter jet through sheer visual spatial dominance.
He controlled the media by shutting them out.
And in the end, he tried to control biology itself. He viewed the universe as a series of mechanics that could be mastered if you just studied hard enough and never compromised.
So as you finalize your script for pplpod, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We started by talking about a man swinging a wooden bat and ended in a cryogenic tank.
Quite the journey.
When you map that trajectory. Did Ted Williams's obsessive quest for immortality, first through the perfect geometry of a baseball swing, then through the high-stakes physics of aviation, and ultimately through the freezing of his own cells, did all of that stem from a superhuman desire to win?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it driven by a deep, terribly human terror of striking out against time itself?